Hi everybody, my name is Professor Ben Garrod and I'm an evolutionary biologist. I work at the University of East Anglia where I'm Professor of Evolutionary Biology and Science Engagement. I've been lucky enough to work all around the world as a field biologist and conservationist, and I very luckily have worked with chimpanzees in Africa, orangutans in Asia, polar bears in the Arctic, and even dinosaurs in South America. Nature is very, very cool, and within nature there are lots of things that we can investigate, lots of questions that need to be answered, and there's lots of different ways that we can do that. We can look at animal behaviour, we can look at genetics, and we can look at one other thing that I'm very, very keen on and am fascinated by and have been since I was a kid. And in my live lesson today, I'm going to be talking about bones. They're very, very cool. But I've got a couple of helpers. There is my cat, Minnie, who will be helping me a little while later. But for now, I need Jack. Come here. Jack, come here. Come here. Come on. Come here. He's not helping right now. Come on. Here he comes. Good boy. Right, if I have Jack, my dog, here is Jack. Now, Jack is very pretty. Oh, hello, Jack. Jack's very cute. But how much do we know about his skeleton? Not a huge amount, because as they say, beauty is only skin deep. Well, that's not entirely true, because underneath Jack's cute little face lies a skull. Now this is a dog skull. It's not from one that Jack knew. He's having a sniff. Yeah. This is a dog skull, and by looking at Jack, would you be able to tell what's going on underneath his body? So thank you, Jack. You can come back later. Oh, you're a good boy. He gets a biscuit for that. Good boy. Underneath Jack's skin and all the hair and all the muscle is something like this. Now, this is a skull that sits on the top of a dog's body and does all the things that it needs them to do. It's got a set of teeth, it's got a set of eyes, and it's got this wonderful brain case here. And bone, right across the animal kingdom, can be used for different purposes. I want to explore that in my live lesson today. But first of all, we need to really understand, what is a bone? Well, it's this hard white thing that sits underneath your skin. You see them at Halloween quite a lot. This really sort of like a rock, really, isn't it? Not at all. Bone in living animals is constantly changing. It's very often pink because it's full of blood vessels, and it changes throughout your life. When you're born, you have nearly 300 bones inside your body. It's a lot of bones. But by the time you're my age, by the time you hit 20 and above, and I'm a little bit above 20 now, your bones start to fuse. So some bones will fuse into fewer bones. This, for example, is the left humerus from a sheep. So it's the left upper limb bone here. It's the one that sits here, like this. You can see in this sheep, when it was alive, even though it's one bone in us, this big bone from your shoulder to your elbow, starts off as lots of different bones. You can see the little lines separating the bone there. Now, if this sheep had lived a little bit longer, then you would have seen this fuse from there and fusing onto there, and it would have fused there as well. And this is because bone grows throughout our lifetimes, and every single bone cell that you have in your body changes on quite a regular basis. Some are faster than others, but on average we say that your skeleton completely changes about once every 10 years. So if you're 10 years old and watching this, you've had one skeleton. Me, I've had about 4 skeletons by now. It doesn't change like a snake changes its skin, but piece by piece, the little cells within each bone will change across our lifetimes. So if you're lucky enough to live to 100 years old, you've had, effectively, 10 new skeletons throughout your lifetime. But that doesn't really tell us, what is a bone? What are these really hard, weird white things? I've got a bone that's been cut in half here, and if you have a look inside, you can see the edge of the bone is what you expect, this hard, creamy, white material. But if you cut a bone in half, you can see this lovely honeycomb structure, and that's the inside of bone. And it's this wonderful, strong object, but it's quite flexible as well. It's not solid all the way through. This is where certain blood cells are made within your body, but also by keeping them nice and lightweight, it means they're strong, but they don't weigh you down. The last thing you want is a really heavy skeleton. But this still hasn't told us what is a bone. Okay, I want to show you what a bone is by taking a bone apart, but I'm not going to cut one in half now. I haven't got a special saw in front of me. I want to use some quite cool science, stuff that you can do at home. If your mum or dad or guardian lets you, you can explore what it means to be a bone, or what it actually takes to make a bone as well, by a little experiment you can do at home. The first thing you need to do is get maybe some chicken bones or bones from the butcher, or a meal that you had in your house, or if you've got any bones lying around maybe that are spare, see if you can... No, it's not going to break. As you'd expect, that's a really, really tough bone. That's not going to break anytime soon, because bone is made from two main components. There's an organic or living component, and this is usually materials such as collagen, and there's also an inorganic or mineral component such as calcium phosphate and other minerals as well. And this combination of really hard mineral and really flexible collagen allows bones to be tough but flexible. Even when you run, if you run on your sports day on your school field or in the playground or in the park, the moment you start running, a huge amount of energy is pushed through your bones, and on a very small microscopic scale, they will twist and turn and change very slightly. And this is allowed because it has these two main ingredients in each bone. Now, if you want to see what would happen if we didn't have all of those ingredients, I've got a little experiment. Now, I only started doing this last night, so you need usually about 2 or 3 days to do this. You've always been told not to mess around with dangerous chemicals, right? And I'm not wearing gloves and haven't got a mask on and haven't got eye protection. But this in here, this liquid, is an acid. But whereas most acids are very, very dangerous, this acid you might put on your chips. This is acetic acid, which we all have in our homes. The more common name is vinegar. Vinegar is an acid. It's a very weak acid, and it's a little experiment you can do at home. If I take this bone out here, now this is the ulna, so it's the lower limb bone from our humerus here. It would attach like this. So it's the bottom bit of the elbow. There's another bone that goes on here, the radius, which we'll see in a little while. I've been soaking this in vinegar for about 24 hours. Even though this is a very thin bone, it should be a little bit flexible. But if you soak it in vinegar, you can actually twist the bone and turn it. And look at the end. The end will really... Oh, it broke. But it's not been soaked there long enough. If you soak it for 2 or 3 days, you can actually twist these bones and turn them into knots. You can curl a bone up and squidge them around, because the acid has dissolved all the mineral content and has only left the soft material, the collagen. You can then do the opposite and take away all the collagen, all the soft material, all the organic matter, and only be left with the mineral. Now, I'm using some dishcloth here to hold this one because it's quite warm. This one has been in the oven for about 3 hours. So I've been cooking bones this morning for you guys. And what this has done, this has cooked away all of the collagen, all of the organic matter, and all it's done is left the mineral. So, whereas this bone is very strong, and remember we couldn't break it open, this one, hopefully, with a little bit of... Oh! This one breaks apart really, really easily. And you can see with just a little bit of force, these bones will break. And this is because even at just 100 degrees or maybe 150 degrees in the oven for a couple of hours, all of the lovely soft collagen has been cooked away, and it's just left with this very, very hard, very brittle pieces of bone like this. So if your bones and your skeleton were only made of mineral, it would be really bad. They would break and fracture the moment you banged your foot, for example, or if you fell off a climbing frame. That would not be great. And if you only had the collagen, then your bones would be all floppy and wobbly, a little bit like a jellyfish or something like a shark, where they have a cartilaginous skeleton. But by having a combination of bones that have lots of minerals and lots of collagen, it means you've got this wonderful composition where we're tough but flexible, really strong but really lightweight. So, we know what bones are. They're this wonderful combination of organic and inorganic matter, minerals and substances like collagen. But where do we go from there? Well, something that always amazes me is that within the animal kingdom, skeletons, they're quite varied, but there's a same blueprint we see again and again and again. Nature likes to copy. It's a little bit like a naughty student. You should never copy others in your class, but nature does just that. It doesn't reinvent the design every time it allows another animal to evolve. It steals ideas. It borrows evolutionary pathways and quirks and adaptations. And an example of this is this wonderful hand here. Now it looks very similar to my hand. It's got 5 long fingers. It's got the same numbers of bones on each finger. You can see them there. And even in this little bit here, it's the same number of little bones or carpals within the base of the hand. And this might look like a human hand with a little bit of a longer set of fingers there, but this is a cast from a chimpanzee hand. And this is what we see in nature again and again. We see twists and turns and slight changes rather than reinventing a design or a particular set of skeletons each time. So you'll often see very similar things right across the animal kingdom. And if you think a little bit about how skeletons work, there are absolutely no animals or mammals or vertebrates alive today that have more than 5 digits. It's what we call the pentadactyl limb, and it's a type of evolution. It's a pattern within evolution that we've been using for millions and millions and millions of years. There used to be different animals long ago related to that one over there. That's Tiktaalik. But things like Acanthostega and some really early animals that first left the water to walk on land, some of those had 7 digits and some had 11. But since then, we've only really used the 5-digit rule. And this is an example of how a skeleton can be recycled and changed, but it's not reinvented each time. So nature likes to borrow from others. It likes to steal ideas. Now we know what a bone is. We know it's made from minerals, and we know it's from chemicals and components such as collagen. We know that inside there's a lovely matrix, like a crunchy bar or an aero bar that allows blood cell production and also keeps the bone lightweight. But what are skeletons used for? The obvious answer is it's a framework. By having this wonderful skull, this dog skull we saw earlier, it protects the brain inside there. And that's the most fundamental, the most key use of some bones is for protection. Whether it protects our organs in our chest, such as our heart, our lungs, whether it protects our organs in our abdomen, like our pelvis, or whether it protects, most importantly, our brain. So protection is one. A framework is another. If you didn't have a skeleton, or you didn't have a skeleton that was rigid like the one we have, you'd be a big blob on the floor. And actually sharks and rays do have skeletons, but they have a cartilage skeleton. They are cartilaginous fish. And it means that if you manage to get a great white shark on the land, it would be quite squashy. You can actually twist them and turn them. Don't try that, because great white sharks are quite dangerous to play around with, but their bones aren't strong like ours. In the same way. So by having a rigid skeleton allows this framework to enable support, and it also allows movement as well. Try imagine running without any bones in your legs, or try imagine gripping or climbing a tree or a ladder without any bones in your arms. So our skeletons are there for protection, it allows us to move, and it offers a framework for the rest of our bodies. That's simple, but it does a lot more than that. Skeletons, or the bones that we have, allow a whole range of different behaviours and different adaptations. First of all, I want to look at, where are we? Where are we? Sensing the world around us. So my other little friend I've got with me, this is Minnie. Hi, Minnie. Minnie is, as you can probably tell, a cat. She's quite relaxed. She's sitting there quite happily right now. She likes a rub. She's sitting on her windowsill. But underneath that cute little face is a killer. A predator that has been evolving for millions of years. You might not think it for that little snuggly kitten you've got at home, but cats are incredible predators. And if you look at their skulls, you can see how and why. This one's slightly broken, but this is a cat skull. And you can see, first of all, they've got massive eyes, much bigger proportionally than something like a dog skull there. This is because they're nocturnal hunters, and having these big orbits or eye sockets allows big eyes. And why would you need big eyes? Hunting at night. They've also, if you turn them around, got these two huge lumps at the back and base of the skull. Now this is where the ear bones sit. Now ours are all within our skull, but lots of different mammals have big chambers where all the little bones and all the other apparatus for hearing are homed. By having these big auditory bulla, these big chambers for hearing, means that whatever this animal was had really good hearing and really good eyesight. So already you can see that the skull or other parts of the skeletal system can allow sensing as well. They can see because they've got these big sockets for vision and eyes. They can hear because they've got these big chambers for hearing as well. And although this isn't a great one, I might bring the dog back, even the sense of smell. We know that dogs have a really good sense of smell, so by having a really long snout with lots and lots and lots of little twisty-turny pieces of bone, what we call turbinates, on the inside there, like pages of a book almost, they're covered in blood vessels and nerve endings to allow a really good sense of smell. So by looking at a skeleton, especially a skull, you can tell a lot about how that particular animal used to sense the world around them. Another one is how they feed. And if I bring the cat skull back a little bit, you can see right at the start, right at the front of the skull, these wonderful sharp teeth there. Now, if I was to annoy Minnie, she would bite me, and she sometimes does. And she uses these very sharp little canine teeth at the front of her mouth. Now, she's a predator, like I said, and she has a combination of very sharp teeth at the front, but also some wonderful shearing teeth at the side within her cheeks. We call these carnassials, and these are big shearing teeth that go over one another in order to tear meat off bone. Very, very cool. With something like a dog, we see the same sort of stuff. These big canines at the front. The canines are for gripping. We've got the incisors at the very, very front. These are the nibbling, the ones that do a lot of the tearing meat off bone or separating skin from muscle. And then we've got these big shearing teeth, these molars or cheek teeth. And these particular ones are called carnassials again at the side. So you can look at the diet of an animal by the skeleton as well. Now these are both carnivores, so they eat meat. On the other end of the scale, we have, where are we? We have this one here. This is a herbivore. Now this is a, this is a deer that you find in the UK. This is a muntjac deer, a little deer that was introduced into Britain over 100 years ago. And if you look at the muntjac's teeth, you can see they're very, very different. You don't see the big canines that you saw on our predators, on our carnivores. And in many ways, they're all quite the same. They're just big teeth, and they are absolutely wonderful for crunching down on tough fibrous material, such as leaves and such as grass and other plants. So by having these big cheek teeth allows the herbivores to crunch down on plant material. There's another group of animals, though, that sometimes eat plants and sometimes eat meat. Do you know what they're called? We've got carnivores, herbivores, and omnivores. And I've got a couple of examples of omnivores here. This is a chimpanzee skull that I'm currently working on for a university. And if you look at the teeth of this very beautiful old female chimp, you see they've got the incisors at the front that we saw with our predators. They've also got the canines. And then at the back, they've got the big plant crushing teeth. So teeth like this allow both plant crushing and meat eating. So sometimes you'll see adaptations for both there. And then again, you get some teeth that are so completely different, like this one. Now, teeth aren't bone. They're made of something different, but they are part of our skeletal system. They sort of sit between skin and bone. It's quite a complicated thing to get into, but for now, we're just going to say they're part of the skeleton system. And teeth like this might look like a T-Rex or some other type of dinosaur, but do you have any idea what this might be from? I'll give you a clue. It's an animal alive today. It's a very big animal. And they can be found around the British coastline. This is a tooth from a sperm whale. Now, these are huge predators. These are the largest tooth predators on the planet. And most of this will be underneath the jawline. But the tooth like this will emerge and will be used to hunt giant squid. So with all the teeth looking the same and slightly facing backwards, even if you didn't know what this animal was, if you've never seen a sperm whale before, you could start to piece together what this animal ate, what environment it lived in, just by looking at the teeth alone. So teeth tell us a huge amount about the animal's biology and their behavior. We can also look at other things such as mating or finding a boyfriend or girlfriend, and a skeleton can be used for that as well. What is this? It's an antler. It's a bony material found on many different deer species around the world, and usually it's only found in the males. One exception are, anyone know? Reindeers. Reindeer males and females both have antlers, whereas most deer that you'll see, things like red deer or sika or fallow or roe deer, only have them in the males. And this is one of the fastest growing natural materials in the animal kingdom. And antler in some deer can grow nearly a centimetre every day or two. It's really fast growing. It grows for the season, it allows them to compete with one another to impress the female deer, and then they drop off. But this is a bony substance used by many different species of deer to impress the females, but also to challenge other males. And one very small but very beautiful example is this little roe deer skull here. You can see that these grow absolutely beautifully. So they can use them to display to one another, they can use them to lock antlers with one another, and by having big antlers like this and very, very clearly signaling that these are healthy animals. This was a very healthy individual. So if you're going to have babies with any male, you might as well have them with one who's got big antlers, because the genes are very good, the genetics are great here, his diet was very good, he's a good investment. So bones can be used to display between males and females as well. They can also be used in a more direct way. And if you are very young and mums and dads don't want you to see this bit, probably turn away now. But for those who are still here, lots and lots and lots of different species of mammal have an extra bone. Well, some of them do. The males do. 86%, that's nearly every species of mammal alive today, has a little bone. Well, the boys have a little bone down there somewhere. It's called a baculum, and it allows the males to breed with the females. So even we can look at the shape and size of particular bones, like antlers, like the bacula, to understand how animals breed, what their courtship might be like, and how they reproduce. Lots can be told just by looking at bones alone. There are some exceptions. Sometimes you'll find an animal. This is another skull that I've been working on to clean recently. This is a beautiful mandrill skull. It's a very large African monkey. They're the ones that have very bright faces. It was in The Lion King. Very bright faces, very bright bums, and they can live in groups of between 400 and 800 individuals in forests in West Africa. But if you look at the teeth, it looks like it must be a carnivore, right? Huge canines, really dangerous looking, terrifying. No, the most dangerous thing they eat or hunt are bugs and small lizards, I think. They nearly only eat seeds and fruits and leaves within their forest. By having these big teeth though, it's a little bit like the antler and the antlers we saw on the deer there. It's a way of displaying to one another and showing who's biggest, who's toughest, and it's a way to impress the girls on the big males here. So sometimes bones can trick us a little bit into believing something that's not quite true. As you've seen, bones are very, very cool. There's lots that can be told from a bone or from studying bones. But as a scientist, what can we really learn from bones? Well, I've got a few examples. We can look at things like disease. This is a series of vertebrae or backbones from a sheep. And whereas they should all be separate, these ones have all fused. And that's because this sheep had a very particular disease that fused some of the bones together. So we can investigate diseases looking at bones. And another very good example of this is this little monkey skull here. Now, this is from a zoo from quite a number of years ago when zoos weren't very good, or weren't as good as they are today, at feeding the animals the right things that they needed. And if you don't feed monkeys the right food, they get horrible bone diseases where they start to change and the teeth don't come out properly and the bone starts to crumble away. So we can look at diseases and welfare looking at bones as well. We can also investigate behavior. This very strange little object here. Any idea what that might be? Very weird, isn't it? It's almost like an echo chamber. That's exactly what it is. This is the voice box of the hyoid bone from a howler monkey. It's a replica, and these South American and Central American monkeys have this special little voice box that sits at the base of their throat, and they boom. They make this wonderful noise that wakes Minnie up. But it's one of the loudest noises made by any animal on the planet. And by having this very specialized bone, allows these wonderful monkeys to call across forests to show where their territory starts and ends. So we can look at behavior using bones as well. We can also look at paleontology. Quick quiz. This is a replica of the largest, it's so big, of the largest claw ever in the animal kingdom. Any idea what it might be from? I know some of you knew. Yes, this is Therizinosaurus, a very strange, very big theropod dinosaur that lived out in Mongolia about 97 to 100 million years ago. And even though these animals had the biggest claws we've ever seen in the natural world, we are pretty certain they never used them to hunt because they were herbivores. So we can look at paleontology using the bones left behind. We don't usually find complete dinosaurs. We might occasionally find skin imprints or a feather imprint, but the bones or the fossil bones are the best things we have to go by. And no, we don't have any DNA from dinosaur times just yet. You can also look at bones and paleontology in a different way as well. This might not look very much, but inside there are hundreds of tiny little bones. You can't smell it anymore, but this is a fossil poo. Ugh. It's a fossil poo from a pliosaur, one of these big prehistoric marine reptiles that swam around the oceans about 100 to 160 million years ago. And some scientists, some paleontologists are able to look inside these coprolites or these fossil poos to understand what some of these big predators ate, how they lived, and what role they played within their environment. And just before I finish, I want to talk about my skull. This is mine. I am, I think, the only person in the world to have their complete skull 3D printed. Looks like me, doesn't it? I had an MRI scan a couple of years ago for a TV project and I had my skull printed off. And on here, I can see where I fractured my skull as a little boy. I can see where I broke my nose, and I've got a very big head, and I can see that on this skull as well. But we can look at human evolution. You can see the one behind me is a replica from a Neanderthal skull, an ancestor of ours or one of our cousins that lived until relatively recently. And we can look at how species change over time from something that looked much more like a chimpanzee millions of years ago eventually becoming something that looked more like a human, like our Neanderthal ancestors, and then eventually something that looks much more like us. I've loved talking to you about the role of skeletons in the natural world and how we can investigate them and explore them and research them to understand different aspects of nature, from diseases and ecology right through to behaviour and evolution. What I want you to do is go and explore the world around you, find some fascinating skull facts, or draw your favourite skeleton. I want you to try and find out the largest bone in the world. What does it belong to? And the smallest, even on your human body. I want your homework. In fact, you do have homework. Your homework is to find out the largest bone in the human body and also the smallest. I'll give you a clue. The largest one is longer than your school ruler, and your smallest one is just a little bit larger than a full stop on a page when you do some writing. You guys have been absolutely wonderful. I hope you've enjoyed my talk on skeletons and bones. Everybody, stay geeky. Bye.